King Kong 1933 is a 1933 American pre-code adventure fantasy horror monster film directed and produced by Marion C. Cooper and Ernest B. Skudsack. The screenplay by James Ashmore Creelman and Ruth Rose was developed from an idea conceived by Cooper and Edgar Wallace. It stars Fay Wray, Robert Armstrong, and Bruce Cabot, and tells the story of a giant ape dubbed Kong who attempts to possess a beautiful young woman. It features stop-motion animation by Willis O'Brien and a music score by Max Steiner. It is the first entry in the King Kong franchise. King Kong opened in New York City on March 2, 1933, to rave reviews, and has since been ranked by Rotten Tomatoes as the greatest horror film of all time and the 56th greatest film of all time. In 1991, it was deemed culturally, historically, and aesthetically significant by the Library of Congress and selected for preservation in the National Film Registry. A sequel, titled Son of Kong, was fast-tracked and released the same year, with several more films made in the following decades, including two remakes which were made in 1976 and 2005 respectively, and a reboot in 2017. The Son of Kong, 1933. The Son of Kong, also known and publicized simply as Son of Kong, is a 1933 American pre-code adventure monster film produced by RKO Pictures. Directed by Ernest Skudsack and featuring special effects by Willis O'Brien and Buzz Gibson, the film stars Robert Armstrong, Helen Mack, and Frank Riker. The film is the sequel to King Kong, being released just 9 months after, and is the second entry of the King Kong franchise. A month after the destruction in New York City by Kong, filmmaker Carl Denham has been implicated in so many lawsuits that he is almost bankrupt. Denham leaves the city aboard the venture with Captain Engelhorn, who knows he too will be similarly prosecuted if he stays, but their efforts to make money shipping cargo around Asia are not very successful. After arriving in the Dutch port of Ducong, Denham and Engelhorn attend a show of performing monkeys, which ends with a song, Runaway Blues, sung by a young woman, Hilda Peterson, whom Denham is immediately attracted to. King Kong vs. Godzilla 1962. King Kong vs. Godzilla is a 1962 Japanese kaiju film directed by Ishiro Honda, with special effects by Eiji Tsuburaya. Produced and distributed by Toho Co. Ltd., it is the third film in both the Godzilla and King Kong franchises, as well as the first Toho-produced film featuring King Kong. It is also the first time that each character appeared on film in color and widescreen. The film stars Tadao Takashima, Kenji Sahara, Yu Fujiki, Ichiro Arashima, and Miyahama, with Shoichi Hirose as King Kong and Haruo Nakajima as Godzilla. In the film, Godzilla is reawakened by an American submarine and a pharmaceutical company captures King Kong for promotional uses, which culminate in a battle with Godzilla on Mount Fuji. The project began with a story outline devised by King Kong stop-motion animator Willis O'Brien around 1960, in which Kong battles a giant Frankenstein monster. O'Brien gave the outline to producer John Beck for development. Behind O'Brien's back and without his knowledge, Beck gave the project to Toho to produce the film, replacing the giant Frankenstein monster with Godzilla and scrapping O'Brien's original story. King Kong vs. Godzilla was released theatrically in Japan on August 11, 1962. The film remains the most attended Godzilla film in Japan to date, and is credited with encouraging Toho to prioritize the continuation of the Godzilla series after 7 years of dormancy. A heavily re-edited Americanized version of the film was released theatrically in the United States by Universal International Incorporated on June 26, 1963. King Kong Escapes 1967. King Kong Escapes is a 1967 kaiju film directed by Ishiro Honda, with special effects by Eiji Tsuburaya. The film was a Japanese-American co-production between Toho and Rankin/Base, and stars Rhodes Reason, Linda Miller, Akira Takarada, Miyahama, Issei Yamamoto, with Haruo Nakajima as King Kong and Hiroshi Sakita as Makani Kong and Gorosaurus. The film is loosely based on Rankin/Base series, The King Kong Show, and was the second and final Toho-produced film featuring King Kong. King Kong Escapes was released in Japan on July 22, 1967, and released in the United States on June 19, 1968. It is the fourth entry in the King Kong franchise. An evil genius named Doctor Who creates Makani Kong, a robot version of King Kong, to dig for the highly radioactive element X, found only at the North Pole. Makani Kong enters an ice cave and begins to dig into a glacier, but the radiation destroys its brain circuits and the robot shuts down. Who then sets his sights on getting the real Kong to finish the job. who was taken to task by a female overseer, Madame Piranha, whose country's government is financing the doctor's schemes, and frequently berates him for his failure to get results. King Kong 1976. King Kong is a 1976 American monster adventure film produced by Dino De Laurentiis and directed by John Guillermin. It is a modernized remake of the 1933 film about a giant ape that is captured and taken to New York City for exhibition. It stars Jeff Bridges, Charles Grodin, and Jessica Lange in her first film role, and features mechanical effects by Carlo Rambaldi and makeup effects by Rick Baker. It is the fifth entry in the King Kong franchise. The idea to remake King Kong was conceived by Michael Eisner, who was then an ABC executive, in 1974. He separately proposed the idea to Universal Pictures CEO Sidney Sheinberg and Paramount Pictures CEO Barry Diller. Dino De Laurentiis quickly acquired the film rights from RKO General and subsequently hired television writer Lorenzo Semple, Jr. to write the script. John Guillermin was hired as director and filming lasted from January to August 1976. Before the film's release, Universal Pictures sued De Laurentiis and RKO General alleging breach of contract, and attempted to develop their own remake of King Kong. In response, De Laurentiis and RKO General filed separate countersuits against Universal Pictures, all of which were withdrawn by January 1976. The film was released on December 17, 1976, to mixed reviews from film critics, but was a box office success. It won a non-competitive Special Achievement Academy Award for Best Visual Effects, and was also nominated for Best Cinematography and Best Sound. Of the three King Kong main films, it is the only one to feature the World Trade Center instead of the Empire State Building. A sequel titled King Kong Lives was released in 1986. King Kong Lives 1986. King Kong Lives, released as King Kong 2 in some countries, is a 1986 American monster adventure film directed by John Guillermin. Produced by De Laurentiis Entertainment Group and featuring special effects by Carlo Rambaldi, the film stars Linda Hamilton and Brian Kerwin. The film is a sequel to the 1976 remake of King Kong. This was the final Kong film in which the eponymous character was portrayed using suits and practical effects. Further films would utilize computer animation. After being shot down from the World Trade Center, Kong is revealed to have been revived from his death, and has been kept in a coma for about 10 years at the Atlantic Institute, under the care of surgeon Dr. Amy Franklin. In order to save Kong's life, Dr. Franklin must perform a heart transplant and give Kong a computer-monitored artificial heart. However, he has lost so much blood that a transfusion is badly needed, and to complicate matters, Franklin says there is no species of ape or other animal whose blood type matches Kong's. King Kong, 2005. King Kong is a 2005 epic adventure monster film co-written, produced, and directed by Peter Jackson. It is the eighth entry in the King Kong franchise and the second remake of the 1933 film of the same title, following the 1976 film. The film stars Andy Serkis, Naomi Watts, Jack Black, and Adrian Brody. Set in 1933, it follows the story of an ambitious filmmaker who coerces his cast and hired ship crew to travel to mysterious Skull Island. There they encounter prehistoric creatures and a legendary giant gorilla known as Kong, whom they capture and take to New York City. Development began in early 1995, when Universal Pictures approached Jackson to direct the remake of the original 1933 film. The project stalled in early 1997, as several ape and giant monster-related films were under production at the time, and Jackson planned to direct the Lord of the Rings film series. As the first two films in the Rings trilogy became commercially successful, Universal went back to Jackson in early 2003, expressing interest in restarting development on the project, to which Jackson eventually agreed. Filming for King Kong took place in New Zealand from September 2004 to March 2005. It is currently one of the most expensive films ever produced, as its budget climbed from an initial $150 million to a then record-breaking $207 million. King Kong premiered at New York City on December 5, 2005, and was theatrically released in Germany and United States on December 14. The film garnered mostly positive reviews from critics, and eventually appeared in several top 10 lists for 2005. It was praised for the special effects, performances, sense of spectacle in comparison to the 1933 original, though some criticisms were raised over its 3-hour runtime. It was a commercial success, grossing over $562 million and became the fourth highest grossing film in Universal Pictures history at that time and the fifth highest grossing film of 2005. It also generated $100 million in DVD sales upon its home video release in March 2006. It won 3 Academy Awards for Best Sound Editing, Best Sound Mixing and Best Visual Effects. A tie-in video game was released alongside the film, which also became a commercial and critical success. Kong, Skull Island, 2017. Kong, Skull Island is a 2017 American monster film directed by Jordan Vogt-Roberts. It is a reboot of the King Kong franchise and serves as the second film in Legendary Pictures' Monsterverse, as well as the 11th film in the King Kong franchise. The film stars Tom Hiddleston, Samuel L. Jackson, John Goodman, Brie Larson, Jing Tian, Toby Kebbell, John Ortiz, Corey Hawkins, Jason Mitchell, Shea Wiggum, Thomas Mann, Terry Notary, and John C. Reilly. In the film, set in 1973, a team of scientists and Vietnam War soldiers travel to the uncharted Skull Island and meet Kong, a gigantic ape who is the last of his species, closely followed by other terrifying creatures. The film was announced in July 2014 at San Diego Comic-Con, and Vogt-Roberts was announced as the director in September 2014. The project initially began at Universal Pictures as an origin story but was later moved to Warner Bros. To develop a shared cinematic universe featuring Godzilla and Kong. Principal photography began in October 2015 in Hawaii and various locations around Vietnam and ended in March 2016. Kong, Skull Island was theatrically released on March 10, 2017, to generally positive reviews from critics, with praise for its visual effects, action sequences, and performances, particularly Jackson and Reilly. It was also a box office success, grossing $566 million worldwide, becoming the highest-grossing installment in the Monsterverse to date. The film received a Best Visual Effects nomination at the 90th Academy Awards. Godzilla vs. Kong, 2021. Godzilla vs. Kong is a 2021 American monster film directed by Adam Wingard. A sequel to Kong, Skull Island, 2017, and Godzilla, King of the Monsters, 2019, it is the fourth film in Legendary Pictures' Monsterverse, the 36th film in the Godzilla franchise, the 12th film in the King Kong franchise, and the fourth Godzilla film to be completely produced by an American film studio. The film stars Alexander Skarsgård, Millie Bobby Brown, Rebecca Hall, Brian Tyree Henry, Sean Augury, Isaac Gonzalez, Julian Dennison, Lance Reddick, Kyle Chandler, and Damian Beecher. In the film, Kong clashes with Godzilla after humans move the ape from Skull Island to the Hollow Earth, homeworld of the monsters known as Titans, to retrieve a power source for a secret weapon intended to stop Godzilla's mysterious rampages. The project was announced in October 2015 when Legendary Pictures declared plans for a shared cinematic universe between Godzilla and King Kong. The film's writers' room was assembled in March 2017, and Wingard was announced as the director in May 2017. Principal photography began in November 2018 in Hawaii, Australia, and Hong Kong, and wrapped in April 2019. After being delayed from a November 2020 release date due to the COVID-19 pandemic, Godzilla vs. Kong was theatrically released internationally on March 24, 2021, and in the United States on March 31, where it was also released on HBO Max simultaneously. The film received generally positive reviews from critics, with praise for the visual effects and action sequences, but criticism towards the human characters. It broke several pandemic box office records, and grossed $470 million worldwide, against a production budget between $155 to $200 million and a break-even point of $330 million, making it the 8th highest grossing film of 2021. The film was also a streaming hit, becoming the most successful launch title in HBO Max's history until it was overtaken by Mortal Kombat.